there's obviously an intense debate about what's happening in American politics. That's probably an understatement of the day. But I wanted to start this conversation off about kind of talking about this rebellion in both the Republican and Democratic parties, and what do you think is the seed of that? Maybe we can start with you, Anne, about kind of what's happening on the Republican side of things, but we've also seen that a lot on the Democratic side as well.
I assume it's the same on the Democrat side. I think more about the Republican Party, my party, and it's been ignoring the voters. I mean, the idea of political parties is we have basically a two-party system. If you want to have an influence, you belong to Democrats or Republicans, and the deal usually is, okay, this means a lot to you, it doesn't mean much to me, so I'll go along with you on that, and then you give me this. Well, for at least 30 years in the Republican Party, it's beginning to look like the rich, the plutocrats, and the Wall Street get 100% of what they want, and what ordinary voters get zero. They won't give us anything on the border. They won't give us anything on trade. I mean, my own party, they just keep saying screw you to their voters, and all we care about are the donors, and we need the money to run the campaigns. And I think there is a lot of this going on with the Democratic Party, so I don't fixate on it as much, but I'm sorry, I think Bernie Sanders is right with Hillary. But let's see those speeches to Wall Street. Both parties are serving the rich and not serving the voters. And I think what we're going to see, well, we'll find out. But as the same thing happening with Brexit, the voters are coming back.
Do you see that same thing happening in the Democratic Party? Is that what you think the Bernie Sanders kind of uprising is all about?
Look, folks are pissed. People are sitting on a white hot stove, and they've been screaming for a long time, and nobody's responded. And so I think I didn't endorse either of the candidates, but I was very inspired by the Bernie Sanders rebellion because I think that both political parties signed off on these terrible trade deals. They both said that if you just do what we say, if you just do it our way, trust me, you're going to be better off. Now, the reality is, if you want to be honest, so in some ways, people are better off. You can go to Walmart and get cheap stuff, but the beneficiaries of globalization are diffuse and ungrateful. The victims are concentrated and pissed. Okay, and that's what's driving this thing in both parties. I think the difference, though, is you said two things. You said the border and you said trade, and I think that shows a little bit of the difference. When you guys talk about trade, I love it. You guys talk about NAFTA, I love it. You guys talk about selling American workers now, I love it. It's like a warm, nutritious bowl of carrots and soup. And then you put in the anti-immigrant poop. And then I can't eat it because I don't agree about the anti-immigrant poop.
Well, that's what I think is the big... It's been both parties saying that to voters. And I mean, that's what Bernie Sanders used to say. We need to protect American jobs. That's what Jesse Jackson used to stand and protest at the border. Whose jobs are being taken? Cesar Chavez, he was the one who originated the phrase wetbacks to protect the Hispanics who already lived here. Okay, boo Cesar Chavez, or you boo a fact. And as soon as Bernie started running for president, I would have agreed with him. I mean, if Trump hadn't come along on trade and on immigration, because he wanted to protect American jobs for the working class. And then as soon as he runs for office as a Democrat, and this is often what happens with both parties, well, okay, sorry, now you have to go speak to La Raza, and now you're for open borders. And that's exactly what happened. 2 weeks after he announced, he spoke to La Raza, changed his position 180 degrees. I think you see a lot of the same thing with Elizabeth Warren. If I listen to her rhetoric, her anti-Wall Street rhetoric, I am second to none in being, anti the bankers and Wall Street and plutocrats who really don't care about ordinary people. There has been a division of the haves and the have-nots like we have not seen in history before, and that is globalism. But as soon as you start running with one of those parties, you have to toe the line and suck up to Wall Street.
So let's talk about globalism, right? You mentioned Brexit briefly. I'd be interested in both of your kind of opinions. If you think what happened in England is going to potentially come over here, or if you think it could manifest itself differently here.
I think it already has.
Yeah, you see a parallel.
Donald Trump got more votes than any Republican in history, and that is with the entire establishment denouncing him. This isn't how it's done, and no, you can't talk about these things. I mean, it really is amazing that it wasn't just the Democratic Party. It wasn't just the Republican Party. It was also the entire media. It's also the entire donor class, all telling him he can't talk about this stuff. And he wins more votes than any Republican in primary history.
Yeah, I think for me the immigration stuff is very painful because I know this is not an abstract conversation for me. I'm very close to folks who are immigrants, who come from immigrant families, immigrant neighborhoods. I did a lot of my work in Oakland, in the Bay Area. I'm very close to a bunch of Muslims. And so for me, it's been very, very difficult this year. First of all, there's just been this complete erasure of even the most recent history. You said we've done nothing on the border. Au contraire. In fact, if you talk to the Latino community, they call President Obama the deporter-in-chief. And the reason they do that is because President Obama, trying to show Republicans that he could be tough on the border, trying to get a deal done, deported more people than any president has ever done, put more personnel and technology on the border than anyone has ever done. We have a net negative immigration now from Mexico, more Mexicans leaving than coming, and it still wasn't enough. The reason that the president then turns around and says, well, I use executive action to go against my own base, outrage my own base, destroy families in my own base, trying to show you that we could cut a deal. Now I'm going to use executive power to do something to try to make it a little bit better. But we can't even share facts. This is the first choose your news election. You pick your filter gives you your facts, and we can't even agree on the basics. It is not true that we have an open border. It is not true the president hasn't done anything. The problem is he got left at the altar when he did.
Speaking of this, immigration obviously was big this week with what happened with the Supreme Court. It was a huge blow to Obama's executive action policies, effectively blocking the programs for the rest of his time in office. What is your reaction to that ruling? Were you surprised by it? And what impact do you think it was going to have here in the election?
I think it'll probably help Donald Trump. I mean, the Brexit election, it wasn't about the trade deals. They can make the trade deals they want to make. Brexit was about immigration. Trump is about immigration. And it's not about not liking immigrants. Nobody's out immigranting me, especially with the Muslims. The point is, these are people who are already here. It isn't liking Muslims or liking Hispanics. It's do we take care of the people who already live here? And bringing in more and more immigrants, and no, he is not the deporter-in-chief. I know this is very big at the Huffington Post. What they did is they redefined what counts as a deportation. Up until Obama, a deportation meant you were in the country, they caught you and deported you. Obama started counting, turning them away at the border. Well, okay, this is like changing the grade. A passing grade is now going to be 40 instead of 70. And look at all the kids who have passed. So they changed the definition of deportation. Look, the immigrants who are already here are going to be a big part of the vote for Trump. They're the ones whose wages are being driven down. It's not you, it's not me. It's probably not a lot of people in this audience. No, to the contrary, you're very happy because you get such cheap maids. And they're so docile. and you have your chef, and even in LA you have pool boys even if you don't have a pool. No, this idea that you are the ones who are speaking for low-wage workers is preposterous. These low-wage workers would like a little less competition for their jobs. It is stunning how the very rich have gotten so much richer, and wages, especially for the working class, have been flat for 20 years. Well, they'd like their wages to go up. If we're going to bring in more immigrants, I want them competing with senators, congressmen, journalists, TV pundits, lawyers, not competing with, the guy who does your landscaping. This idea that, you get to bring in all these poor people doing low-wage work. Yeah, it's good for them, and it's good for the rich people who hire them. But don't strut around like you're Martin Luther King. This is good for you. It's bad for your mate.
So just facts. I'll just try to hang out with the facts. You said that the immigrant existing, Latino community is going to be the one that stands with Trump because he's so tough on their cousins and their friends. This particular, if that were true, I would be very, very worried because I would feel that maybe somehow I was overreacting to what strikes me as racial hostility to this particular immigrant group. But here's reality. Something very interesting is happening with the Latino community. The Latino community used to be a fiction. Let's be very clear. If you look at the polls in, say, 1989, 1990, 91, you ask people that we now call Latinos, do you think of yourself as a Latino, and do you think you have anything in common with other people who are quote-unquote Latino? Only 20% of people said yes. Why? They said, I'm not a Latino. I'm a Mexican, I'm a Puerto Rican, I'm a Dominican, I'm a Guatemalan, what is this Latino? No, I have nothing in common with those people at all. That's how they felt. What has happened is that people who I think speak in a way that is so loose, I'm just being as kind as I can be, that's so loose, it sounds like they're saying, I'm not saying they're saying this, but when you talk about people that you don't talk to, let's say that again, when you talk about communities you don't talk to, then you wind up making mistakes. And one mistake that gets made by the Republicans, which I appreciate them for doing, I hope they keep doing it, is that they sound like they're saying something like this. All Latinos are Mexicans. All Mexicans are immigrants. Most immigrants are illegal or undocumented. And most of them are rapists and horrible people. But now that's not what they mean to say. But when you talk about people that you don't talk to and you don't course correct for the reaction, now what's happened is more than 50% of Latinos say, guess what? We are a community now. They have been pushed into this identity. Democrats could not do this. We're not competent enough. Democrats are not good enough. This is not PC. We tried with the PC thing to utterly fail. They had nothing to do with it. But what happened is this level of antipathy and tone deafness has created now a massive political constituency. You say the immigrants are going to come his way. Right now, the Cubans, not far leftist as a community, the Cubans are 82% against Trump. The Cubans. The Mexicans are 91% against Trump. Either all of them are mishearing you, or somebody is saying something horribly offensive and you're creating the thing that you actually don't want to create.
First of all, you claim that I'm not not talking to these people who go around calling themselves Hispanics. No, I think that's mostly social justice warriors. I do talk to Cubans, Colombians, Dominicans, and Puerto Ricans. And the idea that they do not see themselves as Cubans, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, and so on is absurd. My argument is not that suddenly all of these groups are going to vote for Donald Trump. It's that you are not helping them. You claim you're speaking for them, but in fact, you're speaking for yourself as the overlord of the more and more cheap labor coming in. The vote isn't going to go, I think, Donald Trump will get the same percentage of the Hispanic vote that, oh, that's right, every Republican always gets. It's 30%. It doesn't matter if you're George Bush, John McCain, Mitt Romney, Jan Brewer, it's about 30%. Now you'll have all of the people who don't think of themselves as Colombians, Mexicans, Cubans, but Hispanics, La Raza founded by white people, by the way, with money from the Ford Foundation. They'll be ginning up the social justice warriors, so you may not get more of the Hispanic vote. I think Donald Trump absolutely gets more of the African American vote. And if only I could make bets with all of you, I'd make a lot of money. Not more than Obama, or not more than Hillary, more than any Republican since Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
He's going to do very well with the African American vote for a Republican.
Yeah, and now listen, you actually shouldn't laugh at that. I'm going to agree with you. Part of the weakness of the Obama coalition, which a more disciplined candidate would be able to exploit. I don't know if Trump will be able to exploit it, but it is a danger. Part of the weakness of the Obama coalition is that the Obama coalition requires something quite extraordinary. It requires that half of every black voter vote for the Democrats. Oh no, I'm sorry, not half. 60%. Oh no, I'm sorry, not 60%. Oh, I'm sorry. 80, oh no. 90, oh no. 90 to 92% of the African Americans who go to vote have to vote for Democrats to win. Now, that is an extraordinary requirement. In other words, if you have 20 African Americans in a room and 3 of them decide to vote for Trump, the Democrats are in deep trouble. Now, I would say that if you're African American, you have a very good reason to continue voting this way. But if you are a disciplined Republican candidate, and I don't think you have one, but if you had a disciplined Republican candidate, they could make an argument. And at some point, one of them will. And the taking for granted of the black vote, which has gone on for way too long in the Democratic Party, that will at some point, if something is not done, come back to bite somebody in the butt. I just don't think that Donald Trump has his teeth in.
Let's kind of build off of what you guys have been talking about. You called it loose language, politically incorrect. You recently said on CNBC that you like that Donald Trump is politically incorrect. Do you ever worry that at some point that politically incorrectness offends enough people or will alienate, people that he will need to win?
No, and that was I just want to, this is a small point, but it always annoys me when I get misquoted this way. I was asked, not by you, I saw the headlines too. It was sent out by CNBC saying, Coulter likes that Trump is politically incorrect. I was asked, do you think this is a problem or something like this? And I said, look, I like that he's politically incorrect, but that's not why he's winning. He's winning because of immigration. That is the issue. And it's weird that that a sentence can be changed that way, just as, when Trump, after the Orlando shooting, he sends out a tweet responding to someone saying, thanks for the congrats, but I don't want congratulations. We need to be strong. And all over the media reports the words, but I don't want congratulations, as he's going around saying he deserves congratulations. Well, no, I'm sorry. That's just a different way, and it wasn't you. It was the CNBC headlines. So, yeah, no, I don't think it's a problem at all that he's politically incorrect. I think that is a selling point. That isn't his main selling point. And no, I think he has proved that people are really fed up with political correctness. We do have a lot of problems in this country, and we need to be able to talk about things. I mean, it's just crazy with everything going on in the world and everything going on in this country that we actually have a one-week debate on whether the word schlonged is a, is it a vulgarity or not, and whether we can say prisoner, and whether we can say woman, and it's just become so oppressive that it's kind of refreshing and bracing to hear Donald Trump.
I don't understand the whole politically correct objection. When I say I don't understand it, I literally don't. It used to be called civility. It used to be called. I'm going to try to speak in a way that I can be heard and listen in a way that you can speak, and it was called civility, and it's the price of civilization. What it means is everybody does not get a chance to say exactly what you think, exactly the way you think it, and this may be new for some groups, but it's not new for other groups. So for instance, if you're like Donald Trump, part of your main calling card is your authenticity. I am authentically angry about X and Y and Z, and I am going to throw off the shackles of not being able to express my authentic outrage. And everybody goes, well, that's refreshing. As if like that demographic has been unable to speak freely for 200 years. So, it's fine, I get it. But the scary thing about it is, if you want to be fair, if you believe in equality, you say, okay, well, here's the deal. You are, Mr. Trump, authentically pissed off and free to say whatever you want. But I've got 40 million black people, and we're pissed off. And there's 50 million Latinos, and they're pissed off. And there's 6 million Muslims, and they're pissed off. Now we're all just gonna go nuts, and guess what? Then you don't have a country. So the price of having a country is that all of us figure out a way to speak so that we can be heard, to listen to other people can speak, and that's called civility. It's only called politically correct when some groups insist upon it.
I mean, the discourse, if anything, has gotten, I think, a lot less civil. You say that it's just civility, political correctness. No, they're little Nazi block watchers. It's a way for boring people to feel a sense of nobility by correcting other people's language. I mean, seriously, prisoner, woman, we've gone from, and incidentally, one of now my heroes, Thurgood Marshall, always insisted that Supreme Court opinions describe African Americans, as we say now, or people of color, as Negroes. That was the appropriate civilized term. It was never used as an epithet. And for the Supreme Court, it was all, if any of you are in law school or went to law school, it's always kind of a funny moment in the law school constitutional law class where some, poor little 21st century kids, after reading the opinions that are referring to Negroes, raises his hand and says Negro. But that's the way the Supreme Court opinions were written. And, we went from colored person, that's no good, Negro, that's no good, to African American, we get to person of color, so we take 50 years to go from colored to person of color. You just swear. It's just this way of being bossy, and yes, of course, most people want to be polite and civilized and have debates, but that's not what people are talking about when it comes to political correctness.
Here's where I agree with you, here's where I don't agree with you. I agree with you that some of this stuff can be annoying as F. It's just, it can be that way. And especially I think on some of the campuses, you have gotten to a point where they actually don't want speakers to come on campus if they don't agree. Now, I think that's wrong-headed. I think that's wrong-headed. I think it's much better for you to go to a campus one semester and me to come the next semester, and for the students to have to deal with both of us, than for me to be shut out or for you to be shut out. So I think it's much stronger on the left, this idea of, shut them down, don't let them speak. I think that's wrong-headed. I think it's dangerous. So I'm against that. I also agree with you that there is sometimes this air of superiority and this kind of, gotcha kind of a thing. And you almost have people, it's like they're rushing to be the first person to use the term intersectionality in the conversation. And, and I think that's other than constructive. But I get where they're coming from. And I think that it is incredibly difficult, I think, sometimes for people to remember. If you say the word American, still in this country, there's an image that comes up. And if you don't look like that, and you don't talk like that, and you don't love like that, you don't feel like you fit in here, even if you've been here for generations. And so, people trying to figure out how they can sit at this table, I think deserve a little bit more empathy than I often see the right wing give them. And I think that people on the left need to be sometimes a little bit less annoying about it. But I don't understand why this has become the battle cry. The worst thing in America is political correctness. Trust me, there's a lot worse things going on in that.
Well, it wasn't. That's why I was clarifying. That is not Donald Trump's main selling point, so we can move on from that.
All right, well, let's talk. We've talked a lot about Donald Trump. Let's talk about the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton. Do you think that she's going to be able to capitalize on these kind of incendiary kind of comments that Trump sometimes make? And how also, I guess, as a reporter, we look at this. How does she or can she get some of these Bernie supporters and the Black Lives Matter supporters that have been so frustrated and have felt like they are not a part of this coalition?
Do you have an answer? Oh, wow. This has really, really been a heartbreaking thing. If you're a Democrat and you want to stop Trump and you're watching this go on, I don't think the folks in the kind of Hillary Clinton camp get it yet. I don't think that they understand.
They don't have a lot of time left to get it.
And we got a convention coming up. I've seen Hillary Clinton actually, in her own way, try to reach out to the Bernie voters, but she does it in a way that they're literally reaching past each other. So for instance, Hillary has greatly moved. She is out there talking about we need to expand Social Security. She's talking about all these issues, which are frankly Bernie's issues. In her mind, as a policy wonk, that is a massive, that is like sending roses and flowers and chocolate candy and a guy with a violin. I mean, she's like, this is some love I'm sending. And the Bernie people are like, meh. Meh. I mean, they're just not moved. They're not impressed. They don't care. Because Bernie's people are not policy people, they're process people. They want a fair process. They want the money out of the process. They want the umpires to be fair. They don't want the DNC chair picking sides. They want a fair process. And so, when you send me your roses and your chocolate, and I'm allergic to roses, I don't care about chocolate, what I really want is an apology. It's hard to make that date work.
I think it is issues with at least some of the Bernie voters. And it is the same issue that drove Brexit and that drove Trump, at least for the working class Americans. The social justice warriors, they're just empty-headed, bubble-headed college kids. They'll vote for whomever the Democrats tell them to vote for. But the working class I think they not the rhetoric of Hillary. I mean, come on, nobody doubts that she is 100% owned by Wall Street. I mean, consider the fact that Donald Trump is, as far as the first presidential candidate, and to raise it and talk about it in debates, that he wants to end the tax break hedge fund managers get. It's an outrageous loophole. It should have been closed the moment it appeared. But these people raking in billions of dollars are taxed at lower rates than your average middle-class American, because they just count all their income as if it's an investment. And just to explain this quickly, the rest of us have jobs doing what we do, you know, reporter, writer, TV personality. We make our money and then we give our money to a bank to invest for it. That isn't our job. So our investments get taxed at whatever it is, 15%. Well, these hedge fund managers, Warren Buffett's, they just count their job is to invest. They count all of their income as investment income. It's outrageous. It is unfair. I don't care how much money it brings in. A tax system has got to be seen as fair. Only one presidential candidate has raised that, and it wasn't Hillary Clinton. She was in the Senate for plenty of time. But no, she's owned by Wall Street. She's not going to change that. And to that extent, I think Bernie made a good point. Release those speeches. Release the transcripts of all those speeches you gave to Wall Street firms and got paid a lot of money for.
Talking about taxes, obviously Donald Trump has taken a lot of flack for not releasing his. Do you think, I mean, have you called for him? Do you think it's important for him to?
Not at all. Ooh. No, the only people who care are people who hate him and they're doing it to taunt him. He has a perfectly good reason.
Wait, I'm sorry, hold on a second. You just literally moments ago, in the universe I inhabit,
I can explain.
Talked about the importance of tax.
Of what the rate is that the government is asking.
Right, and for your point of view, just to make sure
that's what the rate is. The overall system needs to be changed. Everyone knows Donald Trump is a rich man. Everyone knows, like anyone else, I'm sure he tries to take advantage of whatever deductions he could. He's in real estate. It's not going to tell us how much he's worth. Well, it's not a wealth tax, it's an income tax. And his reason for not releasing them is 100% true. He's being audited. And this idea that, well, that doesn't make it against the law. Well, okay, if you're charged with murder, it's not against the law for you to go out and give interviews with the press. But I think your lawyer's going to tell you, don't do that. No, of course it's not against the law. But if he releases the taxes that are being examined by the IRS right now, you will have the entire Democratic Party going through his taxes. Oh, here, the IRS guy can just sit back, put his feet on his desk, looking for any T he didn't cross, going through all of every page of this. No, okay, let the IRS call off its audit and he can release them. But does anyone care? I mean, I suppose I made a big deal. Well, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, does anyone care who would ever in a million years vote for Donald Trump? No. You know, I made a big deal about Bill Clinton was the first presidential candidate and president to refuse to release his medical records. Oh well, he became president. Who cares? It's nonsense and niggling.
Yeah. I mean, well, you made a strong case for the need for a sense of fairness, and you made a strong case for the corrupting influence of people paying too little taxes. And I think in the same spirit, I want to agree with you, in the same spirit of you know, people feeling really reassured of some sense of fairness, I think that he should release the ones that he can. And he's not being audited for his entire life. He's being audited for a couple of years. And so for the years that he's already done, I don't see the rationale. But I want to say a couple things about this. You are right that the people who are most incensed about this are the ones who are just most incensed anyway. Right. Okay, so that's fine and that's fair. But at some point, I just want us to be able to call the balls and strikes fair. I will tell you, if Hillary Clinton refused to release her tax returns, I would think that would be outrageous. I think it's outrageous that she won't release her transcripts. I don't feel that I have to pretend that these people are perfect or above criticism. And I do think that just as honest people, it is really disturbing that he won't do it, and that there's a sense that this is a man who said, I could stand on a street corner and shoot people and not lose a vote, but I'm scared to show you my taxes. That scares me. That is what is in there? What is it? It must be bad because it's worse than shooting people. I just don't get it.
Well, I like the idea, and something I think we should all strive for, to have, the same measuring stick. So I'm responding to that part of your argument. I don't think they are the same thing. The concern with Hillary, and there's plenty of other evidence for it, is that she is beholden to Wall Street, that she does not care about the average American. And if you look at what we do know about the Clinton Foundation and how much was paid in salaries and expenses and travel, which was close to 90% of it, and how much was actually spent on the charitable work. That's what it has to do with. I don't need to see her tax returns particularly. I'd like to see what she said to Wall Street banks. I don't know what it is you think you're getting from Trump. I mean, the main complaint is, oh, he's not as rich as he says he is. I don't think anybody cares about that.
Or as charitable.
He's in real estate. I'm sure he took a lot of deductions, probably didn't pay very much in taxes. That doesn't have to do with whether the overall rate is fair. I mean, we have a system, and look, I don't particularly care, but apparently this is democracy. It's the popular will. We think it's good for people to buy real estate. There are all kinds of tax deductions. Every year, economists come out with papers saying the mortgage tax deduction makes no sense. It's very popular. It's not going away. So yeah, there are a lot of tax deductions if you're in real estate. I'm sure that's there. I just don't think it's proving anything that anyone actually needs to know about Trump. We know he's rich. If you don't think he's rich, okay. I'm sure he had a lot of tax deductions, and it's not about the overall rate the way it is with hedge fund managers.
You said something that I wanted to say something nice about the Clinton Foundation. It's almost like Democrats and liberals are scared to say anything about the Clinton Foundation, which is bizarre because the Clinton Foundation has done incredible good in the world. I just want to say, it's done like scary amounts of good in the world because it has a particular model. And I just want to describe the model because if you had a normal operating foundation, which it's not, if you had a normal operating foundation and it gave 90% of its money to its employees, do you know what that would be called? A criminal enterprise, and everyone in there would go to jail. So clearly that is not what we're talking about. The Clinton Foundation is not an operating foundation. The Clinton Foundation is much smarter than that. What happens, I'm just gonna be honest, we're all friends here. What actually happens is Bill Clinton frog marches all these rich people into one room. And he stands up on the stage, and they think something good is going to happen to them. And while they're standing there, he drags some poor group that's helping, dying girls in, Kenya someplace. And he says, you are going to give this group $1 gazillion. And the person says, yes, I will, because they're standing there. And so they write the check, not to Bill, but to the group. It's a big exchange of groups that need money and people that have money. And Bill Clinton, I just want to say this, you'll never hear this in the news. You will never hear this. What Bill Clinton has been able to do, and I have plenty of critiques of him as well, as many of you know, but please don't take this away from him. He has turned his post-presidency into a massive, almost orgy of good stuff. I use the term orgy advisedly, of good stuff. And if you've ever been to the Clinton Foundation, it's one of the most moving, amazing things that you've ever seen, to see these groups come from around the world and finally get some help from Americans. And I think we should be very proud of the Clinton Foundation. I'm tired of them getting kicked around for it. Kicked around for other stuff, but not that.
All right, well, we are going to get the hook here in a few minutes, and we had a lot of difference of opinions, some coming together on a few things. But I wanted to see if we could find one bit of commonality and kind of have you guys get your crystal balls out for the next 6 months. Is there anything that you think can get done in Congress, with the White House, in terms of, there's a lot of talk of criminal justice reform, other things that you think Republicans and Democrats might actually become together on, or just no?
Generally lame duck years, nothing gets done.
Very optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's some way the two parties could get together and screw America before the election, but it's not coming to.
It's highly unlikely. There are some signs, though, that something good could happen after the election, and I'll give you 3 things. Number one, the opioid epidemic. Actually, I was very proud of the Republican candidates who went into places like New Hampshire and Ohio, where a lot of people are taking pills that doctors gave them and then dying because this opioid epidemic is so out of control. And rather than the Republicans, I'm giving you credit, rather than the Republicans blaming
Not my Republicans.
Well, rather than blaming them and saying you're a terrible person, they said, listen, we got to come together and do something about this. I thought that was a very, very healthy sign and a very good sign. I also think that criminal justice reform overall is very, very helpful and positive place of common ground. And actually, Newt Gingrich has been showing incredible leadership on that front, as has the White House. That's been good to see. And then the last thing that I'll say is, there are very few people in American politics that I can say I actually hated. Like, hated. Like, I'm a good Christian kid. I try to love everybody. But there was one person, and it was Paul Ryan. And the reason I hated
We agree!
Notice I said the past tense. Yeah. The reason I said I hated Paul Ryan was because in the middle of the 2012 campaign, he said, we have 2 kinds of Americans, the makers and the takers. And he divided the country. So if you're a disabled veteran, you're a taker. If you're a single mom who has to have food stamps to feed your kid, you're a taker. And I said, somebody who says something like that should be disqualified from ever being near the White House. And I literally wrote that, his quote, on a Post-it, and I put it on my laptop. And whenever I got tired in 2012, I'd read that and I'd get a burst of energy. Paul Ryan, I'm not joking, but Paul Ryan, I think showing an example to both parties, came out and said that was wrong for him to say. He said he regretted saying it, and he is now doubling down on trying to find common ground on the issue of poverty. He's becoming a Jack Kemp Republican, which really is close to where my dad was as anybody else. So that gives me hope. Paul Ryan gives me hope. Now you can open.
First on drugs, the only one who's going to do anything about the drug problem, and it's a serious problem in America right now, is Donald Trump by building a wall. Instead of allowing Mexican drug cartels bring in about 90% of the illegal drugs, including what is billed as prescription drugs. If you actually closely read the CDC report, they count anything as a prescription drug if it has a chemical compound like fentanyl. Who's the main manufacturer of fentanyl? The Mexican drug cartels. And for the first time in American life, I find it's the damnedest thing. Usually, there's a product, a car blows up, a child's toy. What were those toys that were blowing up, those scooter things recently? Whoa, we will have expose after expose. We have got to shut this down, recall these products. But for the first time, when it comes to drug use, we can't figure out where the drugs come from. No, we won't look at that. Let's just work on treatment. Instead of worrying about these scooters that blow up on kids and leave them without eyes and legs, why don't we just have better treatment facilities at the hospitals? No, Republicans are going along with this Democrat idea, building the wall. I mean, it's not, Clem in Texas or Randy in New Hampshire who called up the head of the Sinaloa cartel and said, hey, I have a great idea, let's import heroin. This is being brought in by the Mexican drug cartels. Throwing them out and building a wall is going to do more to end the heroin heroin epidemic, which is a horrible and heartbreaking epidemic in this country than anything else. As for criminal justice, well, what you're talking about with Paul Ryan and criminal justice, I mean, I think it's parallel to the immigration issue. You say you're speaking for the black community in this case, but no, I don't think that's helping to have criminals in black communities. Look at what happened in New York City from, 40 years of mostly Democrats, not all Democrats, but no change in criminal law, and the number of especially young black men being killed in New York City every day, to finally law and order, Rudy Giuliani coming in, to the point that the head of the Baptist Abyssinian Church, is calling Giuliani, I forget what it was, some biblical figure. He came along, we were being overrun. He saved our community. The number of, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it was, thousands to hundreds of not just New Yorkers, but black New Yorkers, and especially young black male New Yorkers being murdered. So I think this is a huge mistake. I thought that was the one thing this government can rarely, it can screw things up, it can rarely do things that have a positive effect. The change in criminal law, particularly brought about by Rudy Giuliani, I thought it was so unquestionable, so magnificent, making parts of the city livable that were never livable before. All these young hipsters in Brooklyn, do they have any idea you couldn't move into Brooklyn until Rudy Giuliani?
Do I get a chance?
It opens up cities, and that's what Republicans are being praised by Van Jones for signing on with Democrats. Let's roll all that back and wreck the country again.
Out of respect to the conference holders, I won't say much, but what I will say is that what you described as some sort of a heaven for many, many people was a hell, and that African Americans who do not use drugs any more than the white community to have been put in prison 50% more, twice as much, 6 times the rate in prison. I went to Yale Law School. Those kids did more drugs than anybody in any housing project. They didn't go to jail. They didn't go to jail. The kids in the housing project went to jail. And that's wrong. I'm done.
All right. Well, we didn't really find some commonality in the end, but it was a very good debate, Van Jones. And I really want to thank you very much for this. And thank you all. Have a great rest of the night.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to ask you to please clear the room as